Om Agana Timaranda Syanganangana Sadakya Chaksurun Militam Yana Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Sayamanupakaramayan Darati Swaparantikam. Vandeham Sri Guru Siyatara Parakamaram Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya. Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam. Sadvaitam Savirutam Paritana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Ladita Shivishyakan Vitam Sya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Dinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sanyavadi Praskada De Sadharine Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayo Delaya Lishta Parayashu Abhadresu Nitya Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavati Otamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Nigama Koparurukaritam Param Shukamakaram Rita Dravisamitam Pivata Bhagavatam Rashamari Mahora Hora Shikubhabhakaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome to Transcendental Tuesday. When I raised my arms, about passed out, had my pneumonia shot yesterday in the shoulder, arm aching like crazy. So I may not be flailing my arms around as much as I normally do. Namaste, Manasaganga, with a nice graphic there. Raleigh, Hare Krishna, and all welcome to the Castro family, Sean and Raquel, Chris, Narayana, Pradyumna Narayan. I see Prashant Saraswat, but I have to translate into his newly initiated name, Pradyumna Narayan. He's our Panditji, supplying all of the connections to the verses that we quote. This is our second day on the 44th verse, third chapter, first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I have a treat for you at the end also. I have one of the movies on the Color Festival that was done by Mahaprabhu, a devotee who has since gotten employment elsewhere, but while he was in the area, he used drones and very good expert photography and a wonderful Harinam soundtrack to record the Festival of Colors. I believe it was in 2018. So at the end of it, remind me, and I'll pull that up on the screen. We can close with that. Good morning, Ram Kishore. I saw you dressed up really nice on the weekend as an attendee of a wedding. Your dhotis tied very crisply in the South Indian style. Pakka, pakka. Here's our verse. Tatra krita yato vipra viparsya buddhi teja saham aham chajagamam tatra nivishta shtara nugrahat soham ya shavayishyami yata ditam yata mati. Good morning, Radhe Shyam. Thanks for joining us. Oh, learned Brahmins. When Sukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam there in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention. And thus, by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have relayed it. Our process is very simple. It just involves hearing. There is a speaker, there's a hearer, and more often than not, there's an audience. Sounds pretty simple, pretty easy, pretty accessible. Don't need any huge qualifications. You don't have to be a PhD. You don't have to be incredibly talented, unique. It's just a process of speaking and repeating. But there's more to it than that. It's a whole science. There need to be certain elements in place before the hearing produces results. You might have a man and a woman. That doesn't mean you have a baby. There has to be a whole procedure, the result of which will be a baby. The man and the woman have to be compatible. They have to be blessed. They have to want to legalize their attraction in holy matrimony. They're supported by their family members. They may not know each other all that well in the beginning. If you had a traditional marriage 100 or so years ago in India, they would have met each other on the day of their wedding, and so they're very nervous around each other, very formal, awkward, you might say, and there will not be any intimacy initially. But over the course of time, they get to know each other. They get comfortable with each other. The conversation flows. They recognize commonalities. They become friends before they become lovers. And it may take weeks or months, may take a year, who knows. But eventually, being attracted to each other, being joined legally, having become friends with each other, eventually, not necessarily in the marriage night, not necessarily honeymoon, but eventually there will be love, and then there will be union, and then there will be children. So the children are the result of a number of different procedures. And I mean procedure by not only processes, but things which precede conception and giving birth. So in order to hear and get the benefit, which is eternality, hear the result of scientific proper hearing by the qualified recipient and the bona fide speaker, is that leaving this current material body, the soul does not again come back and take birth in this material world. The soul's attention, the soul's cravings, the whole soul's hankerings are totally rarefied, sublimated, and purified by the process of hearing attentively from the right source, so that then one's desires take one back to home, back to Godhead, rather than drag one into another material body for another round of birth, death, disease, and old age in this material world. Rishabdev says, no nam pramata kurite vikarma yad indriya prita pramati nasaru mane yatarumano ashana prikesha shedadaha. He says, if one neglects this all-important process of hearing about the absolute truth from his devotees, one's consciousness remains tinged with material appetites, desires, lusts, resentments, bitterness, ambitions. And if those are not exercised by the time of death, they will carry one, just like the air carries aromas. From a rose garden, you have a nice aroma. From a garbage pit, you have a pungent aroma. So similarly, whatever it is that's unresolved in us, whatever it is that we feel unfulfilled about, that we're still craving more of, that's going to take us to another body at the time of death. And so if those subtle desires are towards matter, if we're still in the mood of trying to savor matter, such as it is, that's going to yield us another material body in order to be an instrument to fulfill our desires. And the same principle works for liberation. If you can cultivate spiritual hankerings, if you can cry out for the Lord, Lord, I left you so long ago. It's been a rough time away from you. I didn't learn anything from it. I didn't gain anything from it. I'm just going to do a 180 now. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. And I'm going to try to work my way back to you. And the Lord will help. He will send you a qualified speaker. Then you have to make of yourselves a qualified listener. Sometimes in a marathon, not everyone finishes the marathon. And one of the reasons they don't finish the marathon is before the marathon starts, they're not fully committed to completing the course. They're just going to try it, see how it feels. If it hurts too much, I'll stop and drop out. But those who have predetermined that they're going to run the course, no matter what pain, no matter what inconvenience or potential distractions come, they're more likely to finish the course. So you have to make up your mind. You want to go from this material world to the spiritual world. You have to make up your mind with seriousness and determination that you're going to practice in such a way that at the end of the life, you're not going to come back to this temporary world, but you're going to go to the eternal world. You're not going to go for another round in this dark world, but you're going to go to the world of light. You're not going to take another birth, but you're going to be free for immortality. Now, the hearing process is the key, but it has to be undertaken quite seriously. Good morning, Anjali. Good morning, Govinda Dev. Good morning, Sanjaya. Thanks so much for all of you joining us. And Prabhupada indicates in this purport here to this verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedas. His summum bonum, the ripened fruit of all of his literary output, was the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam is the pure glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And inasmuch as this is his crowning work, this is the conclusive message that Vyasadeva wants to disseminate in human society for their ultimate benefit, he gives it to no less of a person than his own son, Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami then goes to where the king of the world, someone with a lot of influence, would you agree? If you want to spread something, don't you go to the most influential person? And if you can get them to take it and pass it on, then you've succeeded in disseminating your knowledge throughout. And so Sukadeva Goswami approaches the most qualified, influential person in the world at that time, Maharshi Parikshit, and speaks to him. And coincidentally, there are thousands of sages seated in the audience, keeping vigil with Maharshi Parikshit. They also hear, one of them is Suta Goswami. Then he goes to another group of sages who are gathered at Naimisharanya, headed up by Sanak, and that's with this verse. This is Suta speaking to the sage at Naimisharanya. And what he's doing is he's saying, I am going to do my level best I heard from Sukadeva Goswami with rapt attention. I drank in every word, every syllable that he spoke for 7 days. I absorbed it, I realized it, and I learned it from the right source. And now I shall try my level best to make you hear the same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. So it's interesting, the words he uses here, I shall try to make you hear the same thing. In other words, I'll do my part. I'll do my part. I'll repeat it purely as I heard it. And I'll repeat it as someone who's not taking pay, who's not making a business of the Bhagavatam recitation, who is doing it only for my own further purification and for your purification. That's what I can promise, that I will deliver it purely. Prabhupada used to say, people would flatter Prabhupada, you've done wonderful things. You came alone from India with no money and no resources. And now you've got all these temples and all these young men. You're a miracle worker. Prabhupada would say, no, I'm not a miracle worker. I don't produce, things out of the thin air, ashes or gold. I don't do magic tricks. But if there is anything to my credit, Prabhupada said, it is that I have brought the message of Krishna as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita without adulteration. He compared himself to the postman. The postman's job is just deliver. He doesn't open the letter, reread it, edit it, subtract this, add these words, then reseal it, and then deliver it. He just delivers it as it is. So Prabhupada said, if there's anything to my credit, it was that I just delivered the message. Suta Goswami is echoing that same mood. I'm the postman. I've got a message for you guys from Sri Krishna through Vyasadeva, through Sukadeva Goswami, through Maharshi Parikshit, and I will give it to you without charge, without remuneration, without taxation. I will do it because it will do good to me. To share is more blessed to give than to receive. You have to remember that when someone speaks, the person who will be listening most intently will be the speaker, him or herself. I'm a glutton for speaking because I need to hear the knowledge probably more than anybody. I am the one most needy, most destitute, most in need of hearing. Therefore, I've adopted the role of a speaker. The first person that one benefits is oneself. But in the course of doing that, one enriches and enlightens the audience. Suta Goswami says, this is where I'm coming from. This is what I'll deliver. And he says, I shall try to make you hear the very same thing. Well, you can't make someone hear anything against their will. They have to be willing. Like it's said, the old proverbial saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So you can give them all the bona fides. You can do it without pay. You can do it as a representative of the Supreme Personality of God. But there will always be people. There will be people who will hear like a thirsty man in the desert goes to water. There are people you see in the audience, their ears are this big. They're fixed, they're focused. And in that same audience, you always find people looking around, up and down. You can see all kinds of daydreaming, thoughts running through their mind. They pull their cell phone out, they check it. They go downstairs to use the bathroom. They come back, they open the blinds, they close the blinds. They move to another seat, they sit in the chair, they get down, they sit on the floor, then they go back to the chair. Or they're just AWOL, they give some pretext that they can't even come when the classes are taking place, even amongst devotees. I've seen there are people that, I've heard it all. I remember I was president in the Berkeley, San Francisco, California temple for 3 years. And the Sunday feast attracted about 200 people, of which maybe 10 or 20. This is many years ago. I think it's probably quite different now. But there were very few new people that came. It was the old crowd. And one Sunday I counted 4 bloop sannyasis in the audience. And that was nice, having 200 people come to the feast and enthusiastically chanting. But among that crowd, even though they were devotees, there were a lot of years of devotional service under their belts. Or if they weren't initiated devotees, they'd come many times. Honestly, I hate to kind of say it, but there wasn't any real enthusiasm for hearing. Many times I would sit down beside a guest and try to share something with them or ask, do you have any questions? And I would be rebuffed, stoutly rebuffed. No, go somewhere else. I don't have any questions. I know it all. Well, I've been trying to be a devotee for 50 years. When I first joined in Australia in 1970, I don't know why, but people thought I was the only one that could give an adequate lecture. So I lectured every morning for 5 years without exception in Australia. And then when I was president of San Francisco, I gave the morning class at least 5 out of 7 days, and most often the Sunday feast lecture. And now we have a radio station and podcasts, YouTube channel. We have our Motivational Monday, Transcendental Tuesday, Wisdom Wednesday. We have our Chant for Change series on the weekends. We have our Zoom Sangha call. I also respond to invitations to speak to schools and high school classes outside of our campus, and any devotee wants me to speak on a Zoom forum. I've done that a number of times. And I don't know it all, folks. I don't know how others can say they know it all. I don't know it all. I have a long way to go. I have a lot more hearing and chanting before I become a pure, realized devotee of the Lord. So I'll always be eager to hear from anybody. Always. When I don't have anything to do, I just put on the YouTube and I find Gauranga, I find Chaitanya Charan, I find Amarendra. I go to the Wisdom of the Sages podcast by Raghunathan Kastuba. I'm learning. I mean, you're always a learner. Even Krishnadas Kaviraj, after finishing the 17 volumes of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which was just one of many devotional classics he had written. He wrote Rupanaraghunatha Pariyadayabhiki. He said, I'm just simply running after the lotus feet of my spiritual masters in the distance, trying not to lose sight of them, trying to keep the dust which is upraised by their footprints. You know, when someone walks, they'll stir up some dust, and the dust will go up, it'll hover for a little while, and then it'll settle. So his prayer is that before the dust from their feet settles, I hope to catch it. In other words, I'm behind them, I'll always be behind them, they'll always be in front of me. The spiritual dynamic is a learning process. It goes on eternally. You should never settle, because when you settle, you soak and you sour. You stop moving forward. You're always moving forward. There's never a time, either in the conditioned state or the liberated state, when you're not moving forward. And your prayer is, let me keep moving forward at least at the same pace as my predecessor guru. And that way I'll arrive at the place where he's vacated in time. that the dust will not have settled on the ground, but will settle on my lotus feet. Jivanchavo Bhagavantik Vavatangri Renum Namarta Bilabetu Yastu Shivishnu Manu Jastu Lasha Swasanchajo Yastabeda Ganham. It is said in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, let the dust of the lotus feet settling on my head be the ultimate goal of my life. Prahlad Maharaj says the same thing. His guru was Narada Muni. He says, Nesham Matish Tavad Odukramangam Spisiti Artmaka Mahiyasham Pararajobisham Niskinchanam Nav Nirita Nadvat. He simply aspires to be bathed in the dust from the lotus feet of those who have preceded him, of those who have gone on before. So this is what Sutta Goswami promises to deliver. But he says, I'll try to make you hear, but ultimately it's the individual choice. Am I going to remain in this material world, put on a show of devotion just for temporary acceptance and adulation, or am I going to hunker down and do a serious job of hearing in order to purify my desires at my very core, and then as the air carries aromas, count on Krishna to gather me back into his embracing, sheltering arms at the time of leaving this material body. Prabhupada, I heard something the other night that when Prabhupada first started listening to his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta, if you've ever read anything by Prabhupada's guru, it is so high, the vocabulary, the grammar. It's very difficult to understand him. Even when I speak English, you speak English, but when we read Bhaktisiddhanta, you can't just read it, you have to pour over it. It's very difficult. And if you're sitting, and if you imagine you were in his physical presence and hearing him speaking, you wouldn't understand anything on the moment. You'd have to go back, look at a transcript, read it, study it, hear a tape. The devotee who I was listening to said he was quoting Prabhupada. He said that Prabhupada said, and I hadn't heard this before, so I can't vouch. It's the only time I've ever heard of it. But he said that Prabhupada said, when Prabhupada sat and listened to Bhakti, he didn't understand him. His Bengali was so exalted. His English, Prabhupada spoke Bengali, very good Bengali, highly educated Bengali. Prabhupada spoke highly educated English. All of his college courses in Calcutta at the Scots College were conducted in English, and the courses were on a high academic level. But this devotee said that Prabhupada said, when I heard my spiritual master, either he's speaking Bengali or Hindi, or he was speaking in English, I didn't understand everything that he was saying. But nevertheless, Bhaktisiddhanta noted Prabhupada and said, he knows how to listen. He will be very successful. When Prabhupada was living outside the temple doing his business in Allahabad and Bombay, he was coming, giving lectures, he was donating. Some of the disciples went to Bhaktisiddhanta and said, can't we make Abai the president in Bombay or the president of our center in Allahabad? And Bhaktisiddhanta was so confident, having noted the seriousness with which Prabhupada heard, that he said to those disciples, there's no need to press him now. In due course of time, he will do everything. And why did Bhaktisiddhanta have that confidence? Because he heard. And it doesn't depend on your understanding it. It depends on your eagerness, your excitement about hearing, your faith and conviction that simply by hearing from the right source that I will go back to home, back to God. Prabhupada says the audience must be nice term, faithfully receptive. This is not just about hearing, it's not just about understanding, it's not an academic exercise. It's a practice of faith. You're strengthening your faith. And the fact that you've heard something 10, 20, 100 times before, and you sit down and you listen to it the 101st time, that is an act of faith. And nothing gets the attention or the mercy of the Lord more than acts of faith. It is stepping out in faith that brings us to the attention of the Lord. And the arena for doing that, the opportunities to step out in faith, are morning Bhagavatam classes, evening classes, Sunday feast lectures, online YouTube, Zoom classes from more advanced, serious devotees. One must listen regularly, repetitively, consistently, daily with faith. And in doing so, what one does is one transfers one's dependence from being independent and buffeted around throughout the various species, from high to low, throughout the various planets within this material universe. Brahmanda, Brahmite, Kono, Bhagavana, Jiva, Guru, Krishna, Pashadi, Pai, Bhakti, Lata, Bish. After revolving in the cycle of birth and death, incarnating through high species, low species, higher planets, hellish planets, heavenly planets, when one finally comes serious about liberation, one seeks answers from God, and by way of reciprocating, God sends one a bona fide guru. Those who have a bona fide guru have the opportunity to hear from bona fide gurus, should never take it lightly, should never take it cavalierly, should consider that they've got the tools for achieving the ultimate success of life. We're going back to home, back to Godhead. We've mentioned several times, it's not just a matter of hearing, but you have to hear from the right authority. From the scriptures it says, Avaishnava Makod Gunam Bhutam Harikatamritam. Harikatamrita is like nectar. It's the nectar of Charamrita. It's the stuff which can transport you into immortality. However, you should not hear this kata from someone who is not a Vaishnava, from someone who is not devoted to the Lord and who does not come in the transcendental line of disciplic succession. Otherwise, it's said, milk is good for you, but milk touched by the lip of the serpent has poisonous effects. One must hear faithfully from a pure devotee of the Lord. And never was there a time in human history, in cosmic history, when the general tendency of the population has been more perverse. You go back to the time of Maharaj Pariksha, the Dwarka Yuga, the Treta Yuga, the Satya Yuga. People jumped at a chance to hear from a realized soul. Now it's just the opposite. Now we've gone into the winter season, the Kali Yuga. People are lazy, short-lived, materialistically addicted. And so it's just the opposite. It's just the opposite of the way it should be. We should shun mundane topics about intoxication, illicit sex, gambling, and meat eating. We should shun those. We should not want to put trash in our ears. And we should be eager to hear the all pure topics about the personality of Godhead. Those who hanker after hearing the mundane things of this material world are compared to crows. You see along the road where there's some carcass of an animal that's been run over, it's all bloody, it's all stinky, it's a mess. But there's always 5 or 6 crows congregated. They're having a crow convention and a little snack while they're gathered together. So those mundane topics, bestsellers, movies, DVDs, they're like places of pilgrimage for crows. On the other hand, the beautiful topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they're like lotus flowers. And those who take their food from the lotus flowers are the swans. The swans delve down into the lotus flower and they eat the buds of the lotus flowers. The devotees, they relish the pastimes, the activities, the name, form, pastimes, and paraphernalia of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But there's very little market for that in this day and age. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu likened himself to a merchant who brought some goods from a distant land in the hopes of selling them for a profit. But when he arrives there, he finds that nobody's interested in what he has to sell, and so therefore he gives it away free of charge. Rather than undergo the expense of taking it back from whence he brought it, he just stands on the dock giving these valuable commodities away for no charge. So because there's a dearth of interest in hearing the truth, in this age of untruthfulness and lying. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya. Namo Mahavadhanaya Krishna Prema Vadayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namah. Just to give out. Anyone who accepts it, please take it. And even considering it's free, who will seriously and sincerely and scientifically adopt the process of hearing? It is said in the Kali Yuga, if you tell the truth, people will throw stones at you and beat you with sticks. And if you tell lies, people will honor you and they'll glorify you. They'll believe whatever lie you tell. And I won't mention any names, but we've seen a lot of that lately. People are actually interested. They're actually more interested in this age in hearing Bhagavad Gita from unscrupulous persons who depart from the simple message of devotion in the Bhagavad Gita and distort it for their personal satisfaction. There's more of a market for people to be misled by blind so-called reciters and leaders than there is a market to hear Krishna's words from the lips of one of Krishna's devotee, having descended into cyclic succession from the authorized Krishna Sampradaya. There are big scholars, politicians, philosophers, and scientists who speak on Bhagavad Gita in their own polluted way. And people rush and gather. They crowd into the halls to hear from them their theories on the coattails. Prabhupada said, if you have some nice philosophy or some personal way of looking at things that you're very attached to and you would like to spread it, he said, write your own book. Right, but they won't do that because they know and they're not famous. No one's going to read their book. So they put their philosophy as a so-called commentator on the Bhagavad Gita. Because Krishna's famous, they go on the coattails of Krishna to try and promote or push their own polluted interpretation of what Krishna said. And there are no lack of listeners. Therefore, it's important to hear from a devotee of Krishna, because a devotee of Krishna is going to repeat what Krishna said. Like the postman, he's just going to deliver the letter. He's not going to add anything. He's not going to subtract anything. The essence of the message, 7th verse, 7th chapter, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna and to all of us and to those commentators who would minimize Krishna or even be so obnoxious as to leave Krishna out of their own interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to them, you do that at your own peril. You cannot ignore Krishna and Krishna's message in Krishna's book without being thoroughly condemned. And this is the essence of the message. Mata parataram nanyat. Mata means first person singular. Mata, me. Parataram nanyat. Me above nanyat. I think you're getting the idea here, right? Krishna says to Arjuna, me above nanyat. There's nothing above me. Kinchid asti dhananjaya. Maisadam idam protam. I am above all other personalities, Brahma, Shiva, Lakshmi, Ganesh. I'm above all other personalities. And in my expanded form as the Paramatma, the Super Soul, I pervade and support all of these worlds, Sutra Managane Eva. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. How about a little musical accentuation? In the Bhagavad Gita, Song of the Supreme, Krishna streams to his team member Arjuna, the cream of all the devotees. Arjuna, the things you do every day, the gifts you give, and every tasty veggie dish, offer them to me with love and see your soul enrich. Cup of water makes me smile, though I could drink an ocean. Flower, fruit, and leaf are fine if they're offered in devotion. Keeping me in the center, your karma will never interfere. because loving devotional service is the dharma of the spiritual atmosphere. I don't play any favorites. Everyone gets what they desire. So if someone longs for me in bhakti, I'm naturally inspired. Even if you mess up a time or two, I won't make any complaint. Just rise up again. You can still shine like a saint. The undiluted souls, Mahatmas, who know reality, feeling my protection, the flow of their affection comes to me. They sing my sacred names with voices sweet, stake their rightful claims at my lotus feet. I see, maintain, and shelter all. I am the seed of everything. From me is beginning, middle, and end. I am the friend of everyone. Arjuna, tell the people boldly, my devotees never die, men and women, high and lowly, everybody's equal in my eye. Anyone who comes to me will never be denied. Bhakti Yoga will set you free. Success is guaranteed. Think of me, become my devotees, and you will live with me eternally. Manmana bhava madbhakta madhyagi mam namaskuru mame vasasi satyam te prati jano sriyosi me sarvadharmam parijagya mame kam saranam bhaja aham tam sarva papibhyo mokshaisi ma suchaham. Further, Krishna says to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, no truth exists beyond myself. Do not be misled. Everything rests upon me as pearls on a thread. I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon. I am the syllable Om, the strength of the strong. I'm the fragrance of the earth. I'm the forest fire bright red. I'm the blazing sunset. I'm the alphabet from A to Z. I'm the seed of everything. From me all things arise. I'm the great man's faith. I'm the wisdom of the wise. I'm the vigor of the strong, not triggered by greed or lust. I'm the great man's faith and the wisdom of the wise. I'm triggered by greed or lust. That sex life comes from me, which is righteous, pure, and just. I am the Paramatma dwelling within everyone's heart. I am the life of all that lives. I am the ending, middle, and start. I'm the sacred Vishnu and of all sorts of lights. I am the sun, stars, and moon at night. The Himalayan mountains, unshakable, unbreakable, indicate me. I am the unlimited, endless ocean of vegetation. I am the banyan tree. I am Kandarpa, god of love, like Cupid with his bow. Of cows I am Sarabi, who gives milk and limitless flow. Of hymns I am Gayatri, of seasons I am spring, of months I am November, the time of peace and harvesting. Of weapons I am Thunderbolt, of conquerors I am Time. I am Yama, Lord of Death, who judges everything. Of beasts I am the lions, of rivers I am the Ganges, flowing liquid and sublime. I am the wind that purifies the spirit apart from the flesh. I am logic pure, concise. I am all-devouring death. Arjuna, this is a tiny indication. There is no end to my manifestations. Every glorious and opulent creation springs from but a spark of my radiation. So why go on, Arjuna, with a more exhaustive list? A tiny spark of me pervades all that exists. Since I create the dual worlds of spirit and flesh, the wise prioritize my service, keeping their hearts forever fresh. My pure devotees think of me and follow me all the time, discussing me incessantly. I am theirs and they are mine. Because they serve with love and never swerve aside, from within their hearts I cause ignorance to subside. The wattage of transcendental knowledge I shine from within so bright, and in deep parental affection guide them to the light. Well, that is the essence of the message of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is speaking it. Krishna is speaking it to his devotee. He's telling his devotee that your devotion to me is approved by me. It is your devotion to me by which you'll get my mercy and by which I'll ultimately gather you back to home, back to Godhead. This International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which was started by the pure devotee of the Lord, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is an effort to train qualified preachers to recite the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita throughout the entire world so that people in general in all parts of the world can take advantage of this movement and thus be relieved of the different threefold miseries of material existence. The physician who has the patient's best interest in mind will not flatter them. The physician who truly wants to cure his patient will give him that medicine by which they will be free from all of their symptoms and enjoy life unconditionally, unrestrictedly. It's also interesting to note that the way a physician gauges the health or lack of it of his patient, we've all experienced it. What's the first thing the physician does? He gets out that flat stick. He says, stick out your tongue and say, ah. Ah, it looks in. And then he determines whether you're healthy or not. Similarly, your spiritual health or lack of it is gauged as well by your tongue. Atasu Krishna Namani Nabhaved Sevan Mukhi Jivado Shayam Evas Paratyadaham. If you're not in spiritual good health, your tongue will speak anything and your tongue will eat anything. Indiscriminately. Speaking willy-nilly anything, any garbage, any trash going into your ears, and eating any garbage and any trash going into your mouth. The tongue is the best gauge of spiritual ill health. Now, those who are being restored to wholesomeness and healthiness, who are purifying their spiritual selves with the ultimate aim of being cured altogether from this material embodiment, entanglement in birth, death, disease, and old age, the medicine is chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Those who are on the progressive path back to home, back to Godhead, they're symptomized by chanting at every opportunity the names of the Lord, discussing the topics of the Lord in the association of pure devotees, eating only prasadam, consecrated, purified vegetarian food offered to the Lord. And this army of devotees, which is being produced by iskcon, and just go online now. During the COVID, we're not able to move about so freely from a physical point of view. But there are so many exalted devotees online now who are speaking Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. There are ample opportunities for those who want to lock themselves into this process of hearing, attach themselves as the most contemporary link in the chain of disciplic succession, and ultimately be dragged back to home, back to God. Just like the inner tube is thrown from the helicopter above or the deck of the big ocean liner, and you've been in the ocean, you had no chance for success, you're doomed to drown, but the ocean liner happened to come along, the helicopter happened to fly above, and now you've got this lifeline, hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord under the tutelage of bona fide devotees. And there are also impersonalists. There are also those who distort the meaning of the Gita. There are also those who give a polluted interpretation of Krishna's message, leaving out Krishna. They're also out there. Our encouragement is avoid them. Don't drink it. The milk, it's milk, but it's touched by the lips of the serpent. In this verse, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, section, second chapter, 234th verse, it says, no one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Sri Krishna through our material contaminated senses. The most powerful of all of our senses is the tongue. It is through the tongue that we either get most contaminated by eating and talking nonsense, but it is by that same tongue that we can also get completely purified and go back home, back to God. When your tongue is trained and conditioned to only eat Krishna prasadam and only talk about Krishna, once a tongue has come under one's control in this sense, na buddhi bedam jana agyaram josyatsara vidvam yukta samachara, bringing the lower self under the control of the higher self by using the tongue properly to vibrate Krishna's message and to eat Krishna prasadam. The other senses, once the tongue crosses over, seeing, hearing, touching, and smelling will automatically fall into line. You haven't got to work on them separately. Just work on the tongue. Just like on a tree, if there's one nice, plump, juicy apple, then there will be others. No tree ever just produced one ripe apple and the others are all tiny and just blossoms or immature. No. If there's one ripe apple, you can count on it. There's going to be dozens and dozens of other ripe apples. So just work on the tongue. Listen very attentively, very seriously, very committedly, repetitively, daily, consistently, every day hear at least one or two lectures by Prabhupada or one of his senior disciples. If you're initiated, listen to a lecture from your guru, listen to a lecture from Prabhupada, listen to a lecture from your guru for 30 minutes each. And then if you can listen to another lecture from another speaker, such as yours truly, then go ahead and do that. This is the medicine. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung, Enechu Kota Nidra Jayo Maya Pisa Chira Kole, living any. How long will you go to unauthorized, motivated, professional Bhagavatam reciters to be misled in the name of spiritual quasi-pseudo practice? The medicine is here. Enechu Shodi Maya Nashibada Hari Nama Maha Mantra Leotumihi. Chant Hare Krishna, hear Hare Krishna, discuss Krishna's pastimes, listen to the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, as presented through the authorized sources, and then you'll wake up. You'll no longer be taken in. You'll no longer be cheated. You'll no longer be conned by unscrupulous men who make a business of repeating Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. But you'll get the real thing and ultimately go back to home, back to God. That's it for Transcendental Tuesday. And I just reminded I have to remind myself of two things. If you were on our show yesterday, I told everyone that the annual Utah Japathon is coming up on Friday. We start the new year off by chanting as many names of God as we can. And we generally, our goal way back when we started was to give one name to every one of the 3 million people that live in Utah. And we passed that a few years ago. We generally chant more than 3 million names of God in that day, that New Year's Day. But in order to generate as many recitations of the name of God as possible and to create the greatest amount of auspicity for Utah and the world in general, we kind of inspire each other, the Salt Lake City Center and the Spanish Fork. We kind of have a transcendental competition, which is good for everybody. It's good. Krishna is more honored. There's more names chanted. Everybody's inspired to take it to the next level. And so there's this rivalry, you might say, friendly, transcendental rivalry between Salt Lake City and Spanish Fork. And the rule is that anybody can donate their rounds to either of the two temples. They don't have to be in state. They don't have to go to the temple. There's a period of time when we have arti at noon, and there's a big feast at 12:30. And then most of the devotees will gather between 12 and 4 and chant together in the temple room. I don't know how much that'll be true during COVID, but others will chant at home, or they'll chant at home, come to the temple in the afternoon, then go home and chant more. But around 6 o'clock in the evening, everybody calls in their scores, and we tally them up. Salt Lake tallies them up, Spanish Fork. And there's a lot of excitement and tension to see who will have outdone the others. So it's within my province to beseech you, who have been listening to me for some time, and hopefully have some attachment to Spanish Fork, that I invite you on New Year's Day, whatever number of rounds you do, whether it's just your normal 16, or whether you're not initiated, you're just doing 2 or 4, or whether as an initiated devotee, you're inspired to start off the new year by increasing the number of your rounds. However number of rounds you chant on next Friday, my request is that you donate them to the overall total of Spanish Fork. And you can call them in, text them in by 6 o'clock at night. And if you look at the comment section in yesterday's session, Motivational Monday, I put my phone number there that you can text to. I put my email that you can email to. Either one by 6 o'clock in the evening. Thanks for being co-conspirators here for the love of God and for the upliftment of our fellow man. All righty. So please comment, ask me any questions. Thank you so much for joining. We have 18 people who have liked us. I don't know how many people are listening, but there are 18 people who have liked us. And sometimes, let's see, it doesn't show me all the names. There are actually 10 names that don't show up. But thank you, Stoka Krishna. Thank you, Manasa Ganga. Thank you, Prashant, Pradyumna, Anjali, Annabelle, Dianete, by Bobby. Justin, thank you, Justin, for your recent donation. Get those items out to you just as soon as I can. Jason Thompson, Dharma Bhavana, Damar, thanks for joining us. Sundari Priya, Sumadura Nanda Sutta. I think that's the first time we've had you join us. Lakshmi Nishringa, down there in Puerto Rico. I love Utah, Lakshmi. Utah is a great place, but when I see your pictures and your videos, Puerto Rico, it's like heaven. Celia, Haribol, Celia, thank you for joining us. Malini Preeti, Sanjay, and 10 more that I can't see. So anyway, thank you all for joining us. If you have a question, put it in the comments, share, join, like, and don't go away, because I have this incredible videos taken by a devotee named Mahaprabhu. He was working in the Utah area in the tech field for a couple of years. He's an amateur photographer, videographer. He had a drone, and he put this video together for us. I think it was 2018 Festival of Colors. So let me see if I can, oh boy, let me see if I can find it now. I'm always challenged. Okay, I'll click on the desktop. Okay, let me open it up first. Maybe that'll be the best way to go. Let me open it up. It's 3 or 4 minutes. And it's got a great Maha Mantra soundtrack to it as well. Okay, here we are. I hope you can see this. I hope you can see this. Okay, this is how we're going to close out our Transcendental Tuesday, with this video of the Festival of Colors here on the Spanish Fork Temple property in 2018. This is a video done by Mahaprabhu Das. All right, shout out to Mahaprabhu for that video. I hope that you are all able to see it. Yes, Ram Kishore says he can see it. Yes, thank you very much. Caru Prabhu, with all due respect, is using his transcendental platform to rig the election. There will be lawsuits. Govinda is a member of the Salt Lake congregation, so he's trying to figure out how he can thwart our plan to increase the number of rounds. Yesterday, he was saying that the election is rigged, and I answered him by saying, no, it's not rigged. It's just a higher voter turnout. Today, he's trying a different tactic. He's saying, I'm using this transcendental platform to rig the Japathon. He says, there will be lawsuits. Anyway, thank you so much. To be continued. tomorrow on Wisdom Wednesday.